there, push that button over there, and there we go. Now we're live. Now we're good. So now I think we got everything, just making sure everything is checked. That's checked. That's checked. Everywhere's check. Yeah, there's a lot of things going on here. A lot of buttons to make sure you got to push to go live. It's like flying a space shuttle or something. It's cray. Okay, everybody. Hello. Welcome to Bible study tonight. I appreciate everybody being here this evening. So I'm Bishop Long. I'm the presiding bishop for the United States Old Catholic Church. And tonight, we're going to have a great Bible study. I'm looking forward to it. There's a lot to cover. And the readings are really, they're fascinating. There's a lot of theology that we're going to go deep into some theology here. So I'm looking forward to that, and hopefully you are as well. Now, if you would like to follow along with us, it's really easy to do. Okay, so all you got to do, guys, is go to the church's site, USOCC, and you follow that up with a .org. And just click on the Bible study link. And when you click on the Bible study, you scroll on down yonder to today's date. And it takes you to our readings. And that way you can follow along. Hopefully you do so. If you want to go to my site, you can certainly do so, and we would appreciate that. And that's Bishop James Long. Bishop James Long, L-O-N-G. You follow that up with a .com. There's a lot of things, some information if you want to check it out, or if you're just bored and have nothing else better to do. But if you would, pick up the books. I want you to purchase as many books as you possibly can. The reason is because before the Tros, well, not the Tros will matter because we have sub-chat on now for TikTok, but 100% of the profits are going to the MKS Kids Foundation. It's an orphanage that we're partnering with. These are my books. I have every right to earn every penny from them. Any author does. If a person writes a book, they should have the right to earn income from it. As a community, we're donating the profits to the MKS Kids Foundation. And also, if you would click on the fundraiser link, we'll leave it up for a little bit longer. And if you can, go to, again, my Bishop James Long, follow that up with a .com, and click on the fundraiser link. And there's one of our clergy members that's needing some assistance. So we've raised a good amount of money, but there's still a little bit more left to make sure to kind of get them over the hump. For those of you who don't know, we don't get paid. As in the Old Catholic Church, we receive no stipend, no salary, no housing, no food allowance. So we get absolutely no compensation whatsoever, none. And I remember one time when I had COVID, that was not good, because not only was not able to do any presentations, but I could not teach online English. And that was not easy. That was not easy because, a whole entire month without any compensation, that was tough. So Judy Ann thankfully stepped up, because if not, I would have been in trouble. So, because we don't receive a stipend or salary. So, and we fund our own ministry. We do the best we can. Yeah, it's no bueno. And I had it. It was a weird one. The COVID, the strain that I had was really, really odd. And one day my temperature was perfectly fine. And then the next day it went up to 103.9. The highest it got to was 104.5. And I was in trouble. I mean, I was there by myself. I mean, if I had 104.5 degree temperature and I needed to get water, I got to get up and do it myself. That's just the way it was. And then it was 100. It was a month. It went on for an entire month. And with no help. That was scary, because I've never had temperature go into 104.5. And then an hour later, it went to 99.7 or 98.6 or whatever. And I was feeling fine. It's like, what in the world is this? And then it shot right back up to 103.9 a couple hours later. That went on for an entire month. No, I didn't go to because there's really nothing they could do. There was nothing. So it was crazy. Yeah, it was nuts. So that was a long, 2 months. Yeah. But the 1 month was dangerous. That 1 month was very, very dangerous. And and it's hard, when you live alone and there's no one to help. You just got to do it, But thank God. No. Well, they live somewhat close, about 45 minutes or so. But I mean, I wouldn't have them drive to my place. There's no way, because it was such a weird. I've never been, having a 104.5 degree temperature in 1 hour, and then the next hour is 98.6. It was strange. But yesterday I had a nagging migraine that just would not go away. Judy Ann was constantly, "Are you go? You go?" Thank you, April. It was just, this migraine just wouldn't stop. And so thankfully, knock on cheap Walmart wood here, hopefully it stays away. But we're going to get into our Bible study, because I want to make sure that we try to get into our meditation. That's important as well. So again, folks, here's the deal. For those of you who don't know, we do our little meditation, and that's wonderful. It's a part of Bible study, but Bible study is first. No. Why are we blocking? Only subscribers are chatting. No. Why are we muting AJ? Because I have subscriber chat on. Yeah. No. You muted AJ. Hold on. There we go. Yeah, you muted AJ, guys. We got to be careful. My moderators are getting me in trouble here. I actually got a. It's not on sub chat. It's not. Yes, it is. Hold on. Let me fix this. Moderators, let me know. Is sub chat on? Yeah, it's on. That's what because if it's not, I need to know. Yeah, I got a notice. I got a warning that one of the subscriber was muted. I got a warning from TikTok. So now if we mute or block, if we mute or block someone that's a subscriber, like a super thing, we get a warning, and 2 warnings, they kick you off. They take away your live for a week. So yeah, we got one warning already. So the second warning, then our lives are taken away for a week. So we got to be really careful. Okay. Heads up for everybody who wants to know. TikTok, they completely did a bunch of changing, which is good. But yeah, so AJ. All right, let's bring in our sister Tracy Ann is with us tonight. Hello, Sister Tracy Ann. Our moderators are getting me in trouble, Sister Tracy Ann.
Well, I'm just glad it wasn't me this time.
Oh, you're glad it wasn't you this time? That's the first time I got a warning. It was in red. It said it said a super subscriber, something like that, was muted, and it said 1 restriction, 2 restrictions, and they remove you for a week.
So that's new, I guess.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and usually, especially if you're on a PC instead of your phone or an iPad, it's hard to reply. You have to kind of scroll the chat down a little bit so that it stays still and it doesn't go up. Well, but if you don't do that, then you could accidentally hit block or mute very easily.
But I can understand why TikTok is doing that, though. Because honestly, I mean, when you have Juliet says she's done, because when you have when you have someone who's a super subscriber, and then people are blocking or what like that, then they're going to say, hey, look, so I get it, but they shouldn't make it so complicated. They should make it much easier, so it's not that easy to accidentally mute or block someone.
Yeah.
And so, Judy Ann, she's freaking out. Way to go, Judy Ann. Way to go. Good job, Judy Ann. Poor old Judy Ann. She's like,
be to her.
Hey, look, you guys don't. She knows how to ditch it out. Let me tell you something. She can dish it out.
I know, but she's not on the phone right now, and she can't take up for herself, so I have to take it.
That's
for her.
funny. You're ready to quit. You are not going to quit, man. Come on. Annie, are we done? Are we done? Jack said I invite someone almost daily during the rosary. That's funny. That's funny. Okay, are you guys ready to do our Bible study?
Yes.
Okay, let's get into it, everybody. Our first reading, everybody. First reading is 1 Kings chapter 10. And we're going to cover verse 1 through 10. 1 Kings chapter 10, verses 1 through 10. She's harassing me is what she's. Wait a minute, friends. You know what? Since we have sub chat on, I do feel a little bad because Judy Ann feels like she's being picked on, and I shouldn't pick on her. I should not. And Judy Ann, I apologize.
Bishop.
There you go, Judy. She's the one who got it, so it's only fair. It's only fair. It's funny. Your feelings are hurt. Okay, 1 Kings chapter 10. And I really played that. That was pretty good. 1 Kings chapter 10, verse 1 through 10. And if you would do us the honor, please, if you could read that for us.
Yes. Now when the queen of Sheba heard of the fame of Solomon concerning the name of the Lord, she came to test him with hard questions. She came to Jerusalem with a very great retinue, with camels bearing spices and very much gold and precious stones. And when she came to Solomon, she told him all that was on her mind. And Solomon answered all her questions. There was nothing hidden from the king which he could not explain to her. And when the queen of Sheba had seen all the wisdom of Solomon, the house that he had built, the food of his table, the seating of his officials, and the attendance of his servants, their clothing, his cupbearers, and his burnt offerings, which he offered at the house of the Lord, there was no more spirit in her. And she said to the king, the report was true which I heard in my own land of your affairs and of your wisdom. But I did not believe the reports until I came, and my own eyes had seen it. And behold, the half was not told to me. Your wisdom and prosperity surpassed the report which I heard. Happy are your wives. Happy are these your servants, who continually stand before you and hear your wisdom. Blessed be the Lord your God, who has delighted in you and set you on the throne of Israel, because the Lord loved Israel forever. He has made you king, that you may execute justice and righteousness. Then she gave the king 120 talents of gold and a very great quantity of spices and precious stones. Never again came such an abundance of spices as these which the queen of Sheba gave to King Solomon.
Excellent. And if we were at Mass, we would say the word of the Lord. Okay, if you could offer your reflection, that'd be great.
Okay. The queen of Sheba hears reports about Solomon's wisdom, and she travels a great distance, and she asks questions, and she tests what she heard. And today, we live surrounded by information, and we don't have to go anywhere. Wisdom is talked about constantly, but it's rarely pursued. We scroll, skim, and consume opinions without ever truly engaging in them. But the Queen of Sheba reminds us that real wisdom requires time, humility, and to seek for the divine truth. Verse 3 says, there was nothing hidden from the king which he could not explain to her. Today, we have AI, we have partial truths, sensationalized headlines, and curated narratives that are in 30-second sound bites to hold our attention just long enough to make us feel informed. But God-given wisdom withstands that scrutiny. It welcomes honest questions, and it does not fear complexity. And in my experience, wisdom through prayer and community and faith reveals a depth that no headline could ever convey. And not only was the queen transformed by Solomon's words, but also how his life was peaceful and in order. This is because true wisdom shapes leadership, especially in work or relationships, and even in your worship. Because when we have wisdom and we let God's wisdom be present, there is a peace and a coherence rather than chaos. And she shows gratitude for Solomon, sharing his wisdom. And today we just don't pay attention to doing that. We get the information and then we go on. Sometimes we jump to conclusions. We take in information without responding, or we respond with judgment. And this passage reminds us that encountering true wisdom should invite active participation and gratitude. It also teaches us that wisdom is not found by accident. It is found by those willing to leave the comfort of what they believe to be true and to ask the hard questions and to remain open to change.
Very good. I appreciate you offering a fine reflection. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So this is what we're going to get into this. It's a longer reading, no question about it. I'm going to kind of go through the reading itself rather quickly and break the verses down to go into a deeper theological explanation. Sister Tracy Ann did a great job with that. So, verse 1. Let's break these down. The fame of Solomon's wisdom, how he made a great name for himself, spread throughout all the surrounding nations. So basically, King Solomon's wisdom was well known, far beyond his own land. People heard about his good judgment, sought him for wisdom all over the world. In verse 2, she came to Jerusalem with a very great retinue, with camels, carrying spices, great quantities of gold, precious stones. She came to Solomon, told him everything that was on her mind. So the Queen of Sheba traveled a long way, bringing gifts of wealth, beauty to meet Solomon. She was curious. She was seeking wisdom herself. In verse 3, Solomon answered all of her questions. There was nothing too hard for him to explain. Remember, Solomon's wisdom allowed him to understand and explain very difficult questions. His knowledge was genuine. It was complete. It wasn't superficial. In verse 4, when the Queen of Sheba saw all the wisdom of Solomon, the house that he had built, the food on his table, the seating of his official, the attendance of his servants, their clothing, cupbearers, his burnt offerings that he made at the temple, she was overwhelmed. So seeing Solomon's wisdom and the way he ran his life and court amazed her, because she realized his greatness came not just from wealth, but from his wisdom, order, dedication. Remember, he was very wise indeed. In verse 5, it says, and she was in all of his wisdom, the food on his table, the seating of his officials, the attending servants, the burnt offerings he made at the temple. So her admiration wasn't just about what she saw. She was moved by the whole atmosphere, respect, worship, the order that Solomon even fostered. We're not talking about that. We're talking about this reading here. So, you're welcome here, but we don't do questions right now on that. Yeah. So we'll answer those type of questions later, and then we'll kind of go from there. Peppermint. So it was between mid 100s, maybe mid 10th century or so BC, something like that. Because remember, the King David, for those of you who don't know, King David, it was around 960 BC, and after Solomon's death, around 931 BC. So, no, it has nothing to do with not feeling welcome. It's just now I'm going to block you. So, anyway, absolutely, Phoebe. Yeah, we'll certainly pray for 100%. Your aunt. So, Phoebe Lewis, please help pray for Aunt. She has been unconscious for a week and has a brain hemorrhage. So yeah, we'll certainly pray for her. Okay. In verse 7, it says, but I did not believe the reports until I came and saw with my own eyes, and indeed the half was not told me. Your wisdom and prosperity surpass the report that I heard. So seeing is believing. She was amazed. And when she experienced Solomon's wisdom firsthand, in verse 8, happy are your servants who continually stand before you and hear your wisdom. So those who serve with respect and humility find happiness. Solomon's wisdom, it really creates joy for those who honor it and work diligently. In verse 9, blessed be the Lord your God, who has given you wisdom and prosperity, has placed such a thing at this at your heart. So her praise recognizes that true wisdom and success come from God. Everything we have, wisdom, prosperity, divine gifts. And then verse 10, she gave the king 120 talents of gold and a very great amount of spices and precious stones. Never again came such abundance of spices as those of the Queen of Sheba gave to the King Solomon. For those of you who want to know, 120 talents of gold would equal over $300 million. And that's actually at $2,500 or $2,600 an ounce. So it'd be more than that because now gold is over $5,000, I think. So yeah, it would be more than, it would be well up close to 400 million. It's a lot of money. So in today's money, about $400 million. Let's go into a deeper theological explanation, okay? The encounter between Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, this is a rather than a retelling, it actually explores a spiritual architecture of what this story really means, uncovering insights that reach far beyond the historical account. There are some stories in Scripture that are so visually rich, so ornate, that people mistake them for fairy tales, for wealth or royalty. But the meeting between Solomon and Queen of Sheba, it's not about luxury. It's about recognition. See, recognizing what God's wisdom looks like when it takes form in human life. Remember, Solomon asked for the wisdom of God. The passage isn't about gold. It's not about spices or royal gifts. It's about two rulers, very powerful rulers, one who has heard rumors of God's wisdom and another whose life embodies it. It's about hunger meeting fulfillment, curiosity meeting revelation, earthly splendor meeting something that cannot be taught. Now, the Queen of Sheba heard stories, whispers about a king whose wisdom exceeded all of the rulers. But here's the first layer of brilliance in this passage. She could have stayed where she was. She was already queen. She was rich. She was respected. Yet something in her stirred the mysterious longing to see for herself. So this is more than just an intellectual visit. It is a spiritual journey that each of us must take, moving from hearsay faith to experiential faith. You see, many people live their entire lives in a borrowed wonder. In other words, they hear stories about who God is from parents and friends and sermons and books, but never begin the long, costly journey to encounter that truth firsthand. And the Queen's travel across the desert bearing gifts, a lot of money, is the soul's journey toward God. Faith begins where comfort ends. She left her own land of certainty to step into a mystery that would either disappoint her or transform her. That is the risk of real spirituality. You cannot remain curious and content at the same time. And when she finally meets Solomon, the text says she told him all that was on her heart. Now think about that. This queen who rules nations doesn't come with formality. She comes with honesty. She pours out her doubts, her questions, her fears, her secrets. Solomon doesn't respond like a politician. He listens like a temple listens to prayer. And then Solomon's wisdom was not just the ability to give clever answers. No, his wisdom was the ability to create harmony between heaven and earth. It moved the Queen of Sheba. Notice that she was not impressed by his wealth alone. She is undone by the order of his kingdom, the house he built, the food on his table, the way his servants dressed and served, the rhythm of worship at the temple. It was the whole thing. In other words, wisdom isn't simply about what Solomon knows. It's what you feel in his presence. His whole kingdom radiates equilibrium. See, wisdom is when your inner world is so tuned to God that even your surroundings start to reflect God's order. See, when people walk into your life, do they feel anxiety or peace? Chaos or clarity? Real wisdom doesn't need to speak loudly. It creates atmosphere. So Solomon's kingdom wasn't louder than others. It was more aligned. And the queen came expecting brilliance, and she left bowing in worship. How profound is that? That is the turning point of this entire story. She doesn't praise Solomon. She blesses the Lord. She recognizes that what she is witnessing is not human talent. It's what happens when God's presence flows through our lives. And that, my friends, is the ultimate purpose of God-given wisdom. Not admiration, but adoration. Difference. See, when your life is in harmony with God, people stop glorifying you because they start sensing him. And she says, "Blessed be the Lord who has delighted in you." That's an incredible statement. What she is saying is this: the beauty of your life tells me how beautiful your God must be. That is profound. Most people think holiness is a private inner purity, but true holiness is invisible theology becoming visible beauty. It's when devotion to God turns into dignity and kindness and rhythm and excellence, things that make strangers feel just a taste of heaven without even realizing it. That's why she brought spices, huge quantities of them, by the way. See, in ancient times, fragrance represented presence. The smell of spices lingering in the air of Solomon's palace told her the presence of God doesn't only fill temples, it fills the ordinary. And then the queen, of course, comes bearing gold and spices and precious stones. These are symbols of earthly glory. But when she sees God's wisdom embodied in Solomon's court, she doesn't feel diminished. She gives more. Why is that? Because in the presence of true wisdom, generosity becomes natural. When we stand before something holy, we stop clinging and start overflowing. And here, my friends, I believe, is the mystical insight that a lot of people miss in this reading. This moment between the queen and Solomon is not about one giving and the other receiving. It's a mutual revelation. Each sees a reflection of God's abundance in the other. Solomon answers her questions and receives her offering. She beholds his excellence and she leaves transformed. That's beautiful. That is the heartbeat of the kingdom, not dominance, but exchange. Not one soul towering above another, but two souls discovering God's beauty mirrored within and between them. That's what church and friendship and love are meant to be. Sacred spaces where God's beauty moves back and forth so powerfully that no one leaves empty-handed. The story is intentionally extravagant because it's the shadow of something greater. Centuries later, Jesus himself refers to it when he actually says, the queen of the south will rise up in judgment, for she came from the ends of the earth to hear the wisdom of Solomon, and behold, something greater than Solomon is here. The queen's journey across the desert, it prefigures the journey of every human soul seeking Christ, who is the true wisdom. Solomon's temple becomes Christ's body, the dwelling place of divine presence. Solomon's table becomes the Eucharist, where food is not gold but grace. And the servants in robes become every disciple who serve others in love. See, and the fragrance of Sheba's gifts become the prayers of believers rising to heaven. And just as the queen said, the half was not told to me. So to every soul that encounters Christ, realizes that no rumor, no sermon, no doctrine can ever match the living experience of Jesus's presence. None. Every single one of us is both Solomon and the Queen of Sheba at different moments in life. We are Solomon when God's wisdom passes through us, when our words comfort, when our work brings order, when our homes radiate peace. We are the Queen when we find ourselves searching, crossing deserts of doubt, hungry to meet someone or something that makes sense of all of it. But here is the deeper truth. Both roles meet in Christ. He is the source of wisdom and the desire that leads us to seek it. He is the Solomon who builds the temple and the Sheba who journeys to find it. He's the answer and the question. And when we let him live through us, the world around us begins to look like Solomon's court, full of harmony and grace and beauty, peace that makes strangers say, surely God is among them. So that's the heart of this text. Really, when Solomon smells like worship. See, the true wisdom, it leaves a fragrance. When the queen leaves, her costly spices mix with the aroma of Solomon's offerings, and the air of Jerusalem, it changes. That's a symbol of what happens when God and human generosity meet. Heaven fills the atmosphere. When our questions meet God's wisdom, when our giving meets his abundance, when our curiosity is met with revelation, life starts to smell like worship. That's what your home, your work, your presence can become. A lingering fragrance of divine reality. Remember, you were not made merely to hear stories about God's wisdom. You were made to embody it. You were not made to admire beauty from afar. You were made to be part of it. So you should feel comfort. And like the Queen of Sheba, may you arrange your world in harmony like Solomon. May your life leave a fragrance so rich, so filled with love and order. The people encounter you and whisper, the half was never told me. Because when God's wisdom finds a home in human hearts, the world does not just change, it awakens. Our second reading, it's technically not a reading, it's a responsorial psalm, but that's okay. We'll still consider it as a reading today. It is Psalm 37, verse 5 through 6, 30 through 31, and 39 through 40. And Sister Tracy Ann, I'm being very careful because I called Sister Tracy Ann Sister Judy Ann yesterday. So Sister Tracy Ann, if you would do us the honor. And by the way, everybody in chat, do me a favor. Can you just type in Sister Judy Ann? Just go ahead and do that. Sister Judy Ann. Everybody in chat on TikTok. Yeah, everybody on TikTok and everybody on all the other social media platforms, do me a favor and put Sister Judy Ann in there. Go ahead and do it, folks. Just go ahead and do it. Sister Judy Ann. Look at that. Wow. Well, I think that's a hint. All right. If you would do us the honor, could you read that for us? Thank you, guys.
Yes. Commit your way to the Lord. Trust in him, and he will act. He will bring forth your vindication as the light, and your right as the noonday. The mouth of the righteous utters wisdom, and his tongue speaks justice. The law of his God is in his heart. His steps do not slip. The salvation of the righteous is from the Lord. He is their refuge in the time of trouble. The Lord helps them and delivers them. He delivers them from the wicked. and saves them because they take refuge in him.
And very good. And of course, we wouldn't say the word of the Lord because it's not a reading today. But very good. We appreciate you reading that. Do you like this responsorial psalm?
I do.
And of course, you're going to be offering your reflection.
Yes.
And yes, excuse me.
We live.
Excuse me.
I'm sorry.
One second. Yes, someone is asking, is Sheba modern day Yemen? Yes, most scholars believe that. All right. After you.
Okay. We live in an age of I want it and I want it right now. Instant answers, validation, quick success, and very loud opinions. And to me, this psalm is teaching us the opposite, to give up our control. Because today, commitment is reduced to intention, but it rarely lasts. We may plan carefully, we brand ourselves, we try to manage outcomes, and we measure our success by visibility. But this psalm asks us to give up that control and commit to the Lord. And to do so is to trust God with everything, with our doubts, our hopes, and especially our timelines. And God does see us for doing the right thing. And that does not require self-promotion like our ego does, because God does the revealing, even if it takes longer than you think it should. But what really stood out to me the most in this reading is the statement, the mouth of the righteous utters wisdom, and his tongue speaks justice, because the law of God is in their heart. But so many people speak so quickly today, whether it's face to face or online, and it's in outrage and usually out of fear or hate. And speech should not be reactive or hurtful, but it should be thoughtful and kind. And when we let God into our heart, our words become steady and truthful, and they inspire rather than divide. And there are so many people with chronic stress, burnout, and despair. This psalm does not shame us for those stressors. It tells us that salvation is not escape from the world, but the strength to endure it. And that God helps, and he delivers, and he remains present even when solutions are slow and answers are incomplete.
Nicely said. Thank you very much. Great reflection. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
All right. Excellent. Yeah. See? This is why I absolutely love when, our Benedictines and laity offer their reflections, because I think it's great. And because, something might click with you, like, oh, that's really interesting, or that's really interesting. Great job. All right, let's go into this. Verse 5, commit your way to the Lord, trust in him, and he will act. So the psalm, David is saying, look, is inviting you to give your whole life, your plans, your worries, your hopes to God, everything. Trust God. He knows what's best. Even if you don't see the results right away, that's okay. When you finally surrender your way to God, God will never let you down. In verse 6, he will make your righteousness shine like the light, and the justice of your cause like the noonday. In other words, David is saying, when you commit your ways to God and trust him, your life will reflect what is truly good and just. Even if others don't see it now, fine. God will bring your kindness and integrity into the light for everyone to see, not to glorify you, but to glorify God. Justice and righteousness aren't just ideals. They become visible in your actions. In verse 30, the mouth of the righteous utters wisdom, and their tongue speaks justice. So people who live well and trust in God will naturally speak words of wisdom and fairness. Your words matter. They can shine light into dark places when rooted in God's truth and love. In verse 31, the law of their God is in their hearts. Their steps do not slip. What David is saying is this: those who follow God closely carry his teachings in their heart. This interconnection helps them stay steady, even when life gets difficult. Their actions are guided by what they truly believe deep inside. Verse 39 and 40 says the salvation of the righteous is from the Lord. He is their refuge in times of trouble. The Lord helps them and rescues them. He rescues them from the wicked, saves them because they take refuge in him. Look, when life gets tough, God is always and will always be our safe place. He is the one who helps and saves us in hard times. When we trust him as our refuge, he becomes our protector from harm, whether that harm is physical, emotional, or spiritual. Now, I want to go into a much deeper theological explanation for this one. Again, this is Psalm 37, verse 5 through 6, 30 through 31, and 39 through 40. This is a passage that's read often for comfort, but rarely understood in its full theological and, I think, spiritual depth. The message we're going to go into how to trust, righteousness, divide, rescue, etc. David's psalm is often treated like soft words for hard days, a promise that God will make things right someday. But if you listen closely, Psalm 37 isn't just about comfort. It's a spiritual architecture. It describes how a human life becomes so intertwined with the pulse of God that peace is no longer a feeling to chase. It's the atmosphere you live in. See, that this psalm gives us a spiritual blueprint in three movements. One, trust that dissolves control. Two, wisdom that arises from the inner law. Three, rescue that begins invisibly long before we see it. Let me break these down. Trust that dissolves control. Commit the way to the Lord, it says. See, most of us think that trust means handing God our plans so that he can make them succeed. David's insight runs far, far deeper. The Hebrew word translated commit literally means to roll away. It implies lifting the weight off your will, off of yourself, and letting it roll into God's hands. This isn't about asking God to bless your path. It's about surrendering your definition of good altogether. The psalm begins with a radical invitation. Stop managing outcomes. Start entrusting yourself to God's character. And the shock of this idea is that it contradicts almost every instinct that we have. See, we build schedules, strategies, backup plans, because many of us, we thrive on control. But faith, real faith, it's not an agreement between two planners. It's the moment when your fear of losing control finally suffocates under the realization that God never loses sight. And then when David says, trust in him and he will act, the point isn't that God finally starts working when we believe. No, it's that once we stop interfering, God's work can move through us unblocked. God doesn't need our anxiety to finish his will. He needs our openness. And here's the paradox. In letting go, you do not become passive. You become permeable. You become open. You allow divine brilliance to shape your decisions, your emotions, and courage in ways that human stubbornness never could. God doesn't simply manage your life, he animates it. And the second part, true, wisdom that arises from an inner law. What do I mean by that? So it is difficult. So later, David describes the mouth of the righteous speaking wisdom because, says the law of God is in their heart. This line holds on one of the most mystical truths of the Old Testament. When God's law migrates from tablets of stone into the human heart, something revolutionary happens. Obedience ceases to be external. Integrity becomes instinct. See, most people think righteousness means behaving correctly. But this passage suggests a much deeper truth. Righteousness happens when your interior world becomes so synchronized with God's nature that holiness no longer feels like effort. It feels like your pulse. It's not that righteous people have fewer temptations. It's that the very structure of their desire has changed. the inner compass reorients towards love. So their steps don't slip. Think about that image. Their steps do not slip, it says. David is not describing moral perfection, but rather he's describing divine steadiness. So when God's wisdom occupies your heart, stability becomes spiritual gravity. You stop stumbling, not because life is easier, but because your footing is in something deeper than circumstances. In Hebrew thought, the heart isn't just an emotion. It was considered the will, the intellect, the soul, all integrated. So to have the law in the heart is to live so aligned with truth that doing right no longer feels like obeying a rule. It just feels like being alive. And that's a sign of maturity in faith, when God doesn't have to persuade you anymore because your soul has become so fluent in his voice. And then 3, I want to explain the rescue that begins before we notice. So the psalm closes by saying that the salvation of the righteous comes from the Lord, who is their refuge in trouble, that he helps and delivers them because they take refuge in him. Now, to modern ears, that sounds like, well, when trouble comes, God will save you. But in the literary structure of the psalm, this isn't mere event language, because this is identity language. God's rescue isn't just something he does, it's something he is. So when you take refuge in God, rescue is happening even before the crisis begins. It's like an ecosystem. The tree doesn't beg the soil for water when drought comes. The root system already lives in what sustains it. So the righteous are rooted in God's presence long before the storm. And so when the storm does hit in our lives, the rescue is already at work from within. And if you think that's pretty cool, here's a profound twist. If our idea of salvation is God saves me from every trouble, we'll live in constant fear until the rescue appears. But if we understand salvation as God within me, navigating the trouble, then we'll never feel abandoned again. See, deliverance, as David sees it, is less about escape, more about coherence. To be saved is to have your life brought back into alignment with the choreography of God's intentions. Trouble no longer owns you because fear no longer defines you. Refuge is not the place you run to, it's the present that you're already in. So when we put all these verses together, they form, I think, an extraordinary, like a spiritual progression. What I mean by trust, which releases control, wisdom, which stabilizes desire, and rescue, that reveals union. So this isn't spiritual comfort, it's spiritual engineering. David is describing how human vulnerability becomes God's vessel. You trust leads to internal law. Internal law produces stability. Stability reveals refuge already present. It's not a set of promises to claim, because it's an anatomy of transformation already occurring. In other words, God is not offering a service. He's inviting a recreation. He's not saying, I'll save you when you fall. No, he's teaching you how to live as someone whose very structure resists collapse. If we read Psalm 37 as if the righteous glide through life untouched, but the Hebrew vision is much more subtler. Listen to this. The righteous are not people who avoid storms. They are people who remain intact through them. Their wholeness, their integrity is itself the miracle. In fact, the righteous became living evidence that spiritual order is even possible in a disordered world. They are the quiet contradiction to chaos. Not people who shout louder, but people whose stillness frightens the darkness because it cannot shake them. So when the Psalm says that their steps do not slip, it does not mean that they never stumble. It means that there's something beneath us that holds even when the ground gives way. That's why David ends with a refuge imagery, the idea that God himself becomes the geography in which a person lives. You know, this reading invites us to trust God not as a problem solver, but as an environment to dwell, not visit, to breathe, not grasp. God is not simply someone to cry out in emergencies. No, God is the air in which your existence finds meaning. To take refuge in him is to be folded back into your original design, the place where your life's rhythm matches his heartbeat. And when you live like that, peace won't depend on calm seas. It will flow like an underground spring, invisible on the surface, but unstoppable at its source. The psalmist's revelation, I think it can be summed up like this. When you trust, you release control of God's timing. When you live rightly, you embody God's wisdom. When you take refuge, you discover divine rescue. That rescue is not a moment, it's a state of being. It's the realization that even in chaos, nothing fundamental can be stolen from a soul that's aligned with God. So perhaps maybe this psalm is maybe the invitation of Psalm 37 isn't hold on until God fixes it. Maybe the invitation is let go until God fills it. Because the moment your way is truly rolled onto him, the light begins to break. Your steps find rhythm. Your refuge stops being a place where you're trying to reach, becomes the presence already carrying you forward. And now our gospel reading is Mark chapter 7, verse 14 through 23. Mark chapter 7, verse 14 through 23. And Sister Tracy Ann, if you would do us the honor, please.
And he called the people to him again and said to them, hear me, all of you, and understand. There is nothing outside a man which by going into him can defile him. But the things which come out of a man are what defile him. And when he had entered the house and left the people, his disciples asked him about the parable. And he said to them, then are you also without understanding? Do you not see that whatever goes into a man from outside cannot defile him, since it enters not his heart, but his stomach, and so passes on? Thus he declared all foods clean. And he said, what comes out of a man is what defiles a man. For from within, out of the heart of man, come evil thoughts, fornication, theft, unaliving, adultery, coveting, wickedness, deceit, licentiousness, envy, slander, pride, foolishness. All these evil things come from within, and they defile a man.
Very good. And of course, if we are at Mass, we'd say the gospel of the Lord. Okay, let's hear your reflection on this.
Okay. Most of us prefer clear external measures of goodness, rules we can follow, behaviors we can perform, and images we can see. It feels safe to believe that holiness can be managed from the outside in. But Jesus insists the opposite, that transformation begins in the heart. Jesus says what comes from within are evil thoughts, deceit, envy, pride, and all of the others. Those are as familiar today as they were then. And they affect our daily decisions, our relationships, our online presence, and our private lives. In this reading, it can be uncomfortable, in that Jesus removes the option of blaming external forces alone. Of course, culture, upbringing, stress, and circumstance, they do shape us. But this goes deeper than that. Jesus teaches us that the heart is the source from which our life flows outward, what we put out. but we are quick to place blame on anything other than ourselves. I believe this reading is teaching us self-examination rather than being defensive. And it doesn't burden us with guilt or place the guilt on us, but it frees us. If evil came primarily from outside forces, we would all be at its mercy. And it ultimately calls us to stop managing symptoms and begin addressing the source. It invites us to trust that God's grace is strong enough to enter our own heart, because the heart is the true starting point, and to let Jesus lead us inward, because the heart is where change and healing begins.
Very nicely said. Great job today, and we appreciate you offering wonderful reflections, and we look forward to praying with you very soon in about an hour or so for our night prayer.
Okay, I'll talk to you then. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, everybody, that's our sister Tracy Ann doing a fine job with our reflections. So thank you for that. Friends, death, you have no fear. Don't fear death. Death is the final illusion of separation. The instant when the soul awakens from its dream of being a wave and remembers that it was always been a part of the infinite ocean. So there's no reason to fear death. Okay. Let's get into this. Verse 14, then he called the crowd again, told them, listen to me, all of you, and understand. So Jesus is gathering everyone around. This is an important lesson. Verse 15, there is nothing outside a person that by going in can defile, but the things that come out are what defile. So Jesus is saying, look, what we eat, or do outwardly doesn't determine what makes us unclean. Instead, what truly affects us is what comes from inside our thoughts, our attitudes, our choices that flow outwards. In verse 16, Jesus is emphasizing this. He says, it says, let anyone with ears listen. Again, he's saying, you need to listen to me very carefully. Verse 17, and when he had left the crowd and entered the house, his disciples asked him about the parable. Even Jesus' disciples were like, huh? Because in a moment, I'm going to explain why it was so complicated for them to understand. And let me do this real quick. I'm going to restart this Gram to the Insta. I've stopped doing the Gram to the Insta, but people have been begging me to start it again. So I thought, okay, whatever, we'll do it again. So just bear with me while I can get this done. Bible study part 2. For some reason, you have to constantly do a stream key and all this other nonsense to run it. So let me do this for them. And that way they can have part 2. Okay. I got to do a puzzle here in a moment. All right. You have there's no reason to fear death. Not at all. None. Okay. Verse 17, when he had left the crowd and entered the house, his disciples asked him about the parable. Okay. And then verse 18, and then he said to them, let me go live. And then he said, then do you also fail to understand? So Jesus gently challenges his disciples. Are you missing the point? 19, it is not outside the person that enters, but it is what comes out that defiles. In verse 20, it is what comes out of a person that defiles. So he repeats the main idea. 21 through 23, for it is from within, from the human heart, that evil intentions come: fornication, theft, unaliving, adultery, greed, wickedness, deceit, lust, envy, slander, arrogance, foolishness. All these evil things come from within, and they defile a person. When we read this, we're like, well, yeah, duh. Okay, but there's something very profound when you understand Jesus's time. And this is where it gets really interesting. So let's go into a deeper theological explanation. In this reading, friends, Mark chapter 7, verse 14 through 23, make no mistake, Jesus dismantles centuries of religious understanding about purity and reveals something so radical that even his disciples struggled to understand. For us, maybe not so much. For them, it was profound, earth-shattering. This sermon is not a moral lesson. It actually explores how Jesus redefined defiledness and holiness, and ultimately what it means to be truly human. There's a scene in the gospel that's so subtle, most people miss how earth-shaking it really is. And Jesus stands before the crowd and says something that overturns the entire religious map of the ancient world. So he doesn't calm a storm or raise the dead. He does something even more disruptive. Now, this is where it gets pretty interesting, isn't it? Because he tells people that God is no longer found in their rituals, but in their interior. And for those listening in that day, that was far more terrifying than any demon or storm could ever be. To understand the depth of this moment, we have to imagine how Jewish life worked back then. Everything was organized around purity, the sacred way of distinguishing what's clean from what's unclean, what's holy from what's not. People believed the pathway to God was from the outside in. So if you did all these things right, ate the right foods, avoided contact with what was defiled, performed rituals of washing and sacrifice, you move closer to God's presence. That's what they were taught. Jesus steps in and says, no, it's not what goes into a person that makes them unclean. It's what comes out. So in other words, the pollution is not external, it's internal. You cannot corrupt your soul through contact, only through expression. This means one of the most revolutionary truths in Scripture. You are not contaminated by the world you live in. You are shaped by the world you create within yourself. That is the theology of this passage. It changes everything. Every religion before this moment followed a logic of what's separation. If something was holy, you fenced it off. You built barriers between sacred and profane. Temples, rules, rituals. Jesus is not discarding sacredness. He's relocating it. He is saying holiness isn't a boundary anymore. It's a bloodstream. You cannot separate the sacred from the secular because the grace of God now moves through the human heart. God no longer hides behind walls or purity codes. The temple isn't the location of holiness anymore. The human being is. That's why this teaching was so difficult. It destroys the illusion that holiness is about distance. See, many people like purity rules because they make our task clear. Avoid this, remove that, keep yourself clean. It's spiritually tidy. Jesus is saying, you can wash your hands 1,000 times and still wound people with your words. You can fast and still foster envy. You can pray and still despise. It's not the outside that betrays you. It's the inner geography of your heart that determines who you are becoming. Jesus says the heart is God's new temple. See, when Jesus names what comes out as things that defile, greed, arrogance, deceit, lust, envy, violence, he's mapping the soul as a sacred space. Think about that. For centuries, people journey to find holy land, but here Jesus reveals an entirely new landscape, the heart as the holy of holies. Friends, that means your mind, your intentions, your emotional life. These are not private, neutral territories. They are sacred ground. And this is where the brilliance of his teaching really pierces through. You don't meet God touching holy things. You meet him by examining what flows from your inner life into the world. What you harbor becomes what you release. The gossip you tolerate in your mind becomes the betrayal on your lips. The resentment you cradle becomes the coldness in your home. The compassion you nurture becomes the peace in your community. In other words, whatever you cultivate internally becomes your outward prophecy. So when Jesus says what comes out defiles, he's not just warning you. He's teaching spiritual physics. What you generate in your heart determines the atmosphere around you. We often think purity means being flawless, never thinking bad thoughts, never failing, never feeling anger or attraction or doubt. But that's not biblical purity. In this passage, Jesus redefines purity as truthfulness to the heart and of the heart. To be pure doesn't mean being spotless. It means being undivided. Look, a pure spring isn't perfect water. It's unmixed water, clear, consistent. A pure heart, likewise, is not one that never feels darkness. It's one that refuses to hide from its own light and shadow. So when we own the truth of what lives inside us, the anger, the envy, the craving for control, we take the first step to transformation. Because God doesn't heal who we pretend to be. He heals who we are. That's why confession, humility, honesty, there aren't just moral acts. They're acts of purification. Because they draw us back into congruence between our outer life and inner reality. So when Jesus warns us about what comes out, he's not condemning humanity. He's diagnosing hypocrisy. He's saying the real impurity isn't imperfection, it's pretense. Now, God trusts you enough to place his kingdom inside you. At first, Jesus' message sounds terrifying. All these evil things come from within, but look deeper. It's also wildly hopeful. He is saying the source of what's broken in us and the source of what's redemptive in us both live in the same place, the heart. That means the same inner world that can produce hatred can also generate forgiveness. The same imagination that can envision deceit can envision mercy. The same mind that can invent envy can invent compassion. God hasn't built your soul as a crime scene. He's built it as a creative soil. In other words, your inner world is powerful territory, and God trusts you with it. He doesn't protect holiness from you. He implants holiness within you, and he invites you to guard it. So while religion reaches for external cleansing, Christ teaches inner stewardship. He's not saying don't touch anything unclean. He's saying become aware of what you release into the world. True discipleship isn't avoidance, it's authorship. You aren't called to escape evil. You're called to stop generating it. We live in a world that's so obsessed with external purity markers. We may not talk about clean and unclean foods anymore, but we've invented our modern equivalents, right labels, right opinions, right social allegiance, right image. We still think righteousness is proven by surface performance. But Jesus tells us, what is your heart producing? You can be politically perfect, socially correct, religiously active, spiritually empty inside all at the same time. Jesus reminds us that transformation always flows from the inside out, never the reverse. No law, no ritual, no ideology can make a person holy if the heart remains untouched. That means that we have to become spiritual gardeners, pulling weeds of bitterness, watering seeds of grace, pruning our attachments, protecting the fragile new growth of love before it becomes fruit. Look, this passage doesn't diminish humanity, it dignifies it. Because if defilement can arise from within, then so can redemption. The same heart Jesus named as a source of evil becomes, through grace, the very dwelling of God's Spirit. Think of the irony. The list Jesus gives, envy, deceit, greed, pride, it describes the inner illnesses that he would later carry on the cross. When he died, he didn't just bear our signs in a legal sense. He stepped into the interior darkness of human heart. He went to the very root of defilement, transformed from within. See, that's not moral improvement. That's a new creation. And what Jesus offers in Mark chapter 7 is not an accusation, but awakening. He is saying you are more influential than you realize. Every word you speak, every thought you allow to linger, every emotion you nurse, it all shapes the moral ecosystem all around you. If defilement flows outward from the heart, guess what? So does holiness. The kingdom Jesus announced is not a place where perfect people gather. It's a world reconstructed from the inside out by hearts that have let God's mercy redraw their boundaries. The sacred isn't out there for us to reach. It's right here, pulsing underneath every choice, waiting for release. Your heart is not a hazard to God. It's his chosen landscape of transformation. So the next time you wonder what it means to be pure, remember this. Purity is not about separation from what's wrong. It's about consistency with what's true. You don't have to run from a defiled world. You have to stop contributing to it. The kingdom of God begins wherever someone's inner world aligns with God's compassion, honesty, and humility. Friends, what defiles us is not contact with the world. What defiles us is when the love of God within us is withheld from the world. And so the prayer for Mark chapter 7 is not, Lord, keep me clean from them, but Lord, make what's in me clean enough to touch them. Because when holiness stops hiding in temples and starts walking through marketplaces, touching lepers, eating with sinners, praying with sinners, that's not defilement. That is God finally coming home. And may Almighty God bless you in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Okay, I know I went kind of fast on that one. I'm trying not to do that, but nonetheless, I did. So we can do the meditation. Because a lot of people are asking me, please don't do the meditation after the night prayer because it gets late, and I understand. All right. So everyone, because time is ticking, and it is ticking fast, I ask that you get into whatever space that's comfortable for you. And let me do this now. I'm going to say goodnight to you guys on podcast. So let me do this very quickly, because what I'm going to do is restart this podcast stream and Bible study. That way we can have... I know I went fast. I did. And I promised I wouldn't do that again. But people put a lot of pressure on me. And so I'm like, well, okay. I do the best I can. All right. Oh, we're not finished. We're doing the meditation now. So it's just better if you're hopefully you're at your spot now, because that takes a lot of time. So let's get to your spots, whatever you are. Get to your comfortable places so we can move. All right. All right, everybody. So we're going to go ahead now and start our meditation session. Find a place of stillness where your body may rest, your heart may listen. Allow your eyes to close, knowing you are safe, you are held, you are guided by God's presence. With every inhale, feel yourself taking in the love of Christ. With every exhale, releasing all strain, all worry, all distraction. You are entering into holy space. I ask now that please, no more gifts on TikTok. Don't worry about liking it. I just want you to be in this moment, in this meditation session. Now begin to bring your awareness to the crown of your head A soft, radiant light begins to glow there. The light of Christ, pure and serene. With every breath, that light gently flows downward. It moves into your forehead and your eyes, relaxing the tiny muscles around your eyes until they soften completely. And feel this gentle light move into your jaw and mouth, unclenching, releasing. And let that light flow down your neck, across your shoulders, melting any burden that you've been carrying. Each exhale releases the weight of the world, and each inhale welcomes God's peace into every cell. The light moves down your arms to your hands. You might notice a faint warmth or tingling. Now this radiant energy flows through your chest, a warm heartbeat of God's love expanding from within. You may even hear your own heartbeat like a soft drum, reminding you that the rhythm of life is the rhythm of God. This light continues flowing down your spine, relaxing each vertebra, unwinding energy all the way down to your hips, your legs, your calves, to your feet, anchoring you to the sacred ground beneath you. Every fiber of your being now glows with tranquil light. You are deeply relaxed, perfectly safe. Imagine now that you're at the top of the staircase, and at the bottom waits the radiant presence of peace and healing. With each number I count, you'll drift deeper, allowing Christ's presence to draw you into restful stillness. 10. Taking the first gentle step down. 9. More serene, more open. 8. Deeper, feeling that divine peace flow. 7. The heart softening. 6. Deeper still, weightless. 5. Halfway there, the mind is beginning to quiet. 4. Peace, stillness. 3. The radiant light is filling your entire being. 2. Deeper, ready to listen with your holy ears. 1. You are resting at the base of the staircase, calm, still, radiant. You are ready to receive. And now step down. Imagine now the warmth of sunlight on your skin. You feel dust beneath your feet, the gentle breeze of Galilee on your face. You're standing among the crowd that has gathered to hear Jesus teach. You see him there, peaceful. He's shining, full of quiet power and love. And when he begins to speak, the sound of his voice feels like a song that your soul already knows. And he says softly but clearly, "It is not what enters from the outside that makes you unholy, but what flows from within your heart. These words enter your entire being. They do not strike your mind, but your soul. Something deep within you begins to stir. You feel Jesus look directly into your heart, not to judge, but to heal. Every hidden shadow you have, every wound, every unspoken fear comes into the light of his gaze. In that moment, you realize that purity begins within, not by what you have avoided, but by what you now allow God to change. At this time, I want you to feel that light now deep in your chest. A brilliance like liquid gold expanding from your heart outward. You breathe into it. You allow that light to purify every old hurt, every harsh word you once believed about yourself. Vanish. You may even see or sense those old layers of your old self dissolving into light, leaving only love in their place. You are becoming something new. Jesus places a gentle hand upon your shoulder, and you can sense his warmth and his compassion, his understanding. He whispers to your soul, "My child, let your heart be my temple. Let my light flow through you, and nothing false will remain, for I will always call you by your name." And now with each breath in, you feel a wave of divine healing, and with each breath out, all the pain is gone. It is subtle but deep, reaching even the places that words cannot touch. Whatever needs healing in you, whatever peace you have yearned for, it is being renewed right now by the living Christ who dwells within. Allow yourself to rest in God's embrace for a few moments. This is where understanding becomes transformation. You understand that Christ's teachings becomes the essence of your very being. You no longer simply hear the message. Jesus says to you, you are his message. Light flowing from the heart, purity born of love, freedom that begins within. And as you breathe, repeat silently. I am healed by the love of Christ within me. Peace flows from my heart. I am whole. I am healed by the love of Christ within me. Peace flows from my heart. I am whole. With each repetition, the light strengthens and becomes permanent, anchoring deep into your spirit. I am healed by the love of Christ within me. Peace flows from my heart. I am whole. A quiet knowing rests within you that Christ has met you here. Something inside you has truly been made anew. I am healed by the love of Christ within me. Peace flows from my heart. I am whole. And now it's time to return, bringing this wholeness with you, knowing that the healing is already done. With each count from 1 to 5, you'll awaken gently, aware, refreshed, and completely filled with the love of Christ. 1. Feeling energy returning to your hands and feet. 2. Breathing deeper, your body reawakening. 3. Your awareness lifting, your spirit grounded and light. 4. Bringing back the full memory of this divine peace. 5. Eyes open, awake, radiant, healed, and whole. Take a moment to rest in gratitude. From your heart flows the love and the light of Christ. This love that you now have purifies, renews, it heals. This light is who you are. Always carry this presence with you, my friends. Gentle, resilient, shining through every word and action. Christ's healing remains within you now and always. Okay. So let's turn the chat on for everybody to say goodnight for everybody on TikTok. There we go. For those of you who are listening to this on podcasts, we will close this out so that you can listen to this at a later time. All right, so let's do this now. Meditation. Let's grab this 1 second. And then you guys will know. 1 second, 1 second, 1 second. Oh, come on. Copy. There we go. what I'm going to do now is I'm doing this meditation for you guys so that you guys can have it. Meditation. Yeah. I don't think I have a thing on meditation, but we'll just put that. Okay, publish. There we go. So now it's being published. All right, good enough. So for those of you who are watching this on all the other social media platforms, we'll be back about 20, 25 minutes or so. I'm running a little late. And we will do our night prayer. But again, we'll see how fast I can get everything turned around. So remember, your value does not decrease based on someone's inability or refusal to see your worth. You're priceless. Don't let anybody tell you or convince you otherwise. And hopefully we'll see you in about 20, 25 minutes for night prayer. God bless.